Welcome to the Supreme Love Project, where you learn to love supremely so you can live supremely. This is a Power Hour. This is the place where you can get the information you need to heal the terrors in your soul and launch a revolution in your life. Get ready. Take notes. Now here's your host, Janine Staples.
Hello, everyone. This is Janine Staples, the founder and president of the Supreme Love Project. Welcome back to another edition of Cold Crush. We are here to heal the terrors in your soul, launch a revolution in your life, and I am back with another star-studded, highly acclaimed expert guest who is going to teach us more paradigms, shifting behaviors, frameworks, methodologies, and practices that will crush some of the cold that you have built up around your soul and in your heart that have caused you to be disconnected from yourself, maybe disconnected from other people. We're here to get answers. We're here to talk it through. We're here to do a lot of sharing. And so you're in the right place. It's a safe space for you to get the help that you need. And we have with us today the one and the only Rose Kress from yogafordepression.com. Rose, are you on the line?
I'm here.
I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for being our special guest.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and be a part of this amazing event.
Thank you so much. We're glad to have you. And so one of the reasons that we invited you to be a part of this summit experience and to be a part of the Supreme Love Project is because you talk about yoga for depression. You talk about the ways that yoga as a practice can help you to do some breakthrough, can help you to sort of learn more about your life force and what that means. And so tell us a little bit about the type of yoga that you teach. No, actually, before you do that, wait, Rose, don't do that yet. Hold that thought. What I really want you to do is tell us about you. I want to hear your story. I want to get to know you better and let the audience know who you are, how you came to this work, and what exactly did you do.
Well, thanks so much, Janine. My story begins basically with a family history of constriction, of mental disorder, and that, growing up as a child with having those issues, but also seeing those issues in family members, and it goes back to my grandmother that I got to see it. I learned certain ways of being and interacting with the world, and having to basically control my environment. And I think we see a lot of this today. There's a lot more people aware of trauma in the world and how trauma acts. But one of the things that people do with trauma is they have to control their environment. So I did things as a small child, like I was the last person asleep at slumber parties. I often couldn't sleep in a room when other people were still awake because of whatever fearfulness was present. I was afraid to, sleep when other people were awake, or afraid to go into dark places, or afraid to do different things, even though I would do different things. And so I really struggled a lot, and my memories of being a kid are not, I didn't have a terrible upbringing. It's not like I was living in an abusive household. I just came into the world with these tight constrictions. And what we know now about epigenetics is that all of the traumas that were happening to my grandmother happened to my mother and happened to me. And so we're all walking around with other people's traumas. They aren't even ours, and they're encoded into our genes. And so, the nutshell of my childhood and of what led me down the path, and today what drives me forward, was really, really extreme anxiety. And it kind of came to a head with a really severe depressive disorder at 17. And I started having panic attacks that would last for several hours during the day, and it happened every day. And I kind of became a different person. If you've ever read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, she describes life as like being underneath a bell jar. And before I had read it, I think before my episode, but after the episode, I was like, yeah, that's what she's talking about. Like, I get it. I was so disconnected I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't meet anybody new. I was at a new high school, and I was not making friends because I couldn't talk to anybody. I was under the bell jar. I was separated from everybody and everything by this really thick glass wall. And I went on medication, which I needed, and I got better, but I still really, I can't go to the grocery store and go shopping with a shopping cart because that triggers me, or I can't do this because that makes me feel panicky, and I can't go back to that. And when I started a yoga practice, it was just simply because I was suffering again, and it didn't have energy. It just, things didn't feel good. They didn't feel right. So I just went to a yoga class, and I feel better when I do yoga, so I'm going to go do yoga. And I happened into Amy Weintraub's yoga class, and I didn't know anything about Amy. I didn't know anything about yoga other than it was like a kind of cool exercise with rest at the end. But Amy has this background. She suffered from long-term depression, a long-term, more low-grade depression called dysthymia, which can last a lifetime. Some people are really struggling with dysthymia, and whereas mine was more acute clinical depression, which can be fixed with medication. And I started feeling better slowly. I didn't notice it. The first classes with her, I would lie down for Shavasana, the rest at the end, and I would feel like ants were crawling on my body. It was like, I don't want to be here. I want to lie down. I don't want to close my eyes in a room full of people I don't know. And slowly, over time, that went away. And I was able to rest and close my eyes and be still without disruption. But it took a long time to get there. And I wasn't seeing a therapist at the time, but slowly I got better. And, today, anxiety is not a part of my story. I was an anxiety person and I was a worrier, but that's not how I define myself, and that's not how I see myself anymore. I feel like I don't call it healed myself. I tend to think of it, there was a deep rift within me due to anxiety, due to loss at an early age of someone that meant something to me. We've all experienced loss in life, but a death at a young age. And I felt like inside there was the adult me and there was the little girl me inside. And everybody's going to find out I'm still 5 years old inside. I know I'm in my 20s and I'm doing stuff and I'm working, but don't tell anybody. I'm still a little girl inside my body. And the yoga took that. It wasn't easy. It wasn't always fun. But some of the practices and self-inquiry helped me to take that 5-year-old, welcome her, hold her, integrate her, and be an adult. And how strange it was to be an integrated, feeling, engaged person on all levels of my being. Sometimes I could be feeling and integrated and engaged, but it wasn't all of me. And today, as I sit here and talk to you, the only thing I'm thinking about is what we're talking about. And I feel my body, and I feel the resurgence of emotions as memories arise from telling this story, but they don't rule me and they don't run my life. It's like I'm in control of my life and my personhood now, and I don't have to have control of the space around me. And so the anxiety has dissolved and the fears have dissolved. It's been an amazing transformation and an amazing journey to be on. So it's what drives me. And it's like, I want to be able to offer this to other people. I don't want to inflict healing upon you, but hey, I've got this toolbox. Here's what it did for me. I'd love to help you. And that's how I walk around every day. So everything I do is in service to helping other people find the wholeness that lives within us. And the lesson, one of the lessons I learned from Amy is that the ancient yogis believed that depression was a false sense of separation. That they believe we are whole beings, but when we identify with who we are, when we're like, oh, well, I have a new computer, so I am my new computer, or I am these fabulous clothes I wear, or the clothes that I don't care about. All of the things that we identify with, and that starts to lead to this separation, and it's false. And, you know, there's a quote, and I don't know it from Einstein because it's not a fact-check quote, but I think it's a sentiment that he was getting at. And the sentiment is that this sense of separation that we feel is not real, and it is killing us. And it's a slow death, but it's killing us. And when we can find the connection and the intimacy, that's when we can find the deep healing that we need. And it's not that other people give us that. It's the reconnection that gives us that leads us to that. It's like it invites wholeness. It invites healing. The healing is already there. The capability is there. It's that we need a catalyst to set it in motion, or we need to clear the space. There's a bunch of junk. It's like our healing capabilities are in the back of the closet, and we've put a bunch of boxes in front of them, and we can't reach those anymore. And we got to unpack all of that stuff and get it out. So unpacking is not fun, but the end result is.
Yeah. The end result, I don't know if you will finish, but the end result in itself, I can say, is well worth it. It's well worth the effort. And Rose, thank you so much for sharing that. There are so many parts of your story, although I feel like you could have probably given us more. I feel like I'm sure there's more. I like so much of what you said. I like to recap for the community. One idea that jumped out at me, and I've talked about with other guests on Cold Crush and other Supreme Love projects, is that you didn't come from a family necessarily that had a history of covert abuse or violence or, I don't know, maybe poverty. I don't know. You didn't actually say anything about socioeconomic class, but I also did not either. You know, I came from a family that was very much like the Huxtables, very much like the Cosby Show. I mean, I was born into a couplehood. My parents were very much in love, deeply in love. My father was extremely present, and, you know, lived with us, doted on us. He adored my mother. It was beautiful. I was the youngest of three girls, and I was wanted and loved and desired and just blessed so abundantly with attention and congratulations and admiration and affection. It was great. And I mean from everyone, from my parents and my sisters. And yet I still came also into the world with a sense of just like a blue, it wasn't a dark cloud, it was blue. I was fairly melancholy. Now, I did suffer child sexual abuse when I was a little girl. I'd say comparatively it was a mild case compared to other people's sort of like horrific experiences. And yet I remembered as I repressed some of those memories when I came back to them as an adult. I can remember how that was the beginning of me feeling violated, feeling confused, feeling abandoned, feeling rejected. And I can see now, because I was still in theta brainwave at 5 years old, that I incorporated a lot of those sense structures into my conscious life. And so I took them on into my childhood, into my adolescence, into my adulthood without remembering where they came from. But I like also the way that you talked about epigenetics. Is when I found epigenetics in my recovery, about 6 or 7 years ago, it transformed and changed my life. I was raised in a Christian household, and I'm still a Christian, a born-again believer, and I profess Christ. And I was born into this loving family, and I was, really popular, academically inclined, a really excellent student. I was an athlete. I had the trappings and the markers of this perfect life. And because I couldn't explain the sort of like erratic lack of rhyme or reason to the trauma bonds that I created with people, who were codependent, the way that I was codependent, or who were narcissistic, sort of like feasting on me to get narcissistic supply, I could not understand how some of these patterns of behavior were manifesting, and then also what happened with me, and I'm wondering if other women who are listening will resonate with this. Sometimes those patterns would fall off, and I would connect with really beautiful light workers, with people who resonated with truth and power and honor and grace and courage. And I came to realize after I learned epigenetics that everyone I called into my sphere was a match for me. The people who were healthy, who were emotionally honest, who were incredibly truthful, who were loving, they were a match for me because I was that person. The people who were codependent or narcissistic, who were verbally abusive or emotionally neglectful or psychologically violent, they were also a match for me because I had a lot of gaping holes and voids in my soul and in my soma that I had not addressed. And so while I was thinking, who am I? Am I a match for people who are really wildly unstable, or am I a match for people who are really stable and strong and really honorable? And I realized I was both. And I was breaking myself apart and splitting and fragmenting myself in 1,000 different directions because I had no health and order and membership in my soul and soma. I was diseased and disordered and dismembered. And some of it was my stuff, and some of it was stuff I inherited from intergenerational inheritance that I knew nothing about, that I had nothing to do with, but that I was born into and I got by birthright. And so I hope that some women who are listening to your story and you just got a glimpse of what I just articulated of mine understand that if you are still struggling and if you need a support system, a program, a practice, and you're feeling really perplexed by yourself, like within yourself, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So tell us about LifeForce Yoga, and how that helps your cure in depression.
Yeah.
And
LifeForce Yoga. So as I mentioned, Amy Weintraub, she was diagnosed with dysthymia and the chronic low-grade.
Can you spell
depression.
that? I don't know what that is.
It's DYSTHMIA, and I may have missed the letter in there. I'm not looking at the word, but it's a Latin word. Low-grade depression is chronic low-grade depression is it's an English term. The layperson term for those of us who are not fluent on the Latin diagnosis terms. But her therapist said to her, you have empty pockets. So you'll always be missing something, so you'll always need to be on medication for this. And a lot of people get that. And this was back in the 80s. And she found yoga and started to feel better. And she decided she didn't want to be on medication. And she worked with, and I think one of the key stories for those that are listening who are working with a therapist or a doctor or prescribing physician that they feel is not listening to them, she switched therapists, prescribing physicians. And after 6 months, the physician said to her, the therapist, I don't remember it right now which one it was, said to her, I don't see you as a candidate for this any longer. And over a period of another year, he slowly brought the medication down and it was replaced with a yoga practice. So through her personal yoga practice and working with herself, she kind of found and discovered and integrated these yoga practices that help people that are suffering with mood issues. And the website is Yoga for Depression because the book is Yoga for Depression, but 80% of people with depression also have anxiety, which means that people with anxiety also suffer from depression. And which I experienced myself, even though my diagnosis was just pure anxiety, I did have a depressive episode because of being anxious for so long. I would feel like, if you're anxious for very long periods of time, you can't help but start to get depressed about it. And if you're depressed for long periods of time, you can't help but start to feel anxious about things. So they co-occurring is the official term, but they appear together. And in people suffering from PTSD, they're having both of those at the same time. And whether or not their official diagnoses or pathologized is the term, that's not important. What's important is that we all have those back and forth. So Amy was seeing this in herself. She was seeing this in people that she worked with, and she started working with people because she had come out of the darkness, literally, and wanted to help lead people out of the darkness. So LifeForce Yoga is really a lot about her experience in working with clients, our experience now as a business and working with others, ancient yoga practices, and modern science. So we read the research, and this practice would be more efficacious if it was slightly adapted in this way. So if you go to a regular yoga class, it doesn't look necessarily like a LifeForce yoga class, because we include things like intention and visualization and breathing practices and sound. So there's a lot of sound in the practice. Hand gestures, which are called mudras, in addition to movement. There's meditative awarenesses that are brought into the practice. And the relaxation we do at the end is not just, relax your body, right? If you're feeling tense and someone tells you to relax, that doesn't work.
Right.
It's like, just relax. Well, if I could just relax, I would. So instead we do like sensing awareness. And these practices, they work. They really bring about deep transformation, because the process is about being present and welcoming what is. So in your story, in my story, all those parts of us that were kind of divided and disparate, it's not about, those need to come back now. It's about, wow, I'm feeling divided. I'm feeling separated. There is a part of me that feels really sad and broken right now. I'm going to feel that sad and broken part. Oh, we need to cry? Let's cry. So it's about being without judging, analyzing, fixing, and without even delving into the story. Because the body carries all of the seeds. So you could be in analysis for the rest of your life and work things out mentally and intellectually, but the body still carries all of those seeds. So, someone who's suffering from sexual abuse or who has suffered from sexual abuse as a child, when the pattern is repeated within the body, and it might be, women who've been sexually abused as children, when they first go to be sexually intimate, that pattern is kind of reactivated in the mind and in the body. And so the body can respond with that fear, and I can't do this. And that's partially because it's still in the body. And so to release it from the body is so important. And that's one of the things that yoga does, is it moves the body and it moves the muscles in such a way that basically the sludge and the residue of all the seeds that were carried are moved to the surface of the muscles. And then through practices like meditation and breathing and mantra and all of that, we release that. And so we don't have to carry that. But if we start, we continue with, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, then we can kind of put those things back in the body. So there are a lot of therapists. We have a training program, and half of the people that take our program are therapists, because they're looking for ways to help people move things out of their body in the psychotherapy room without doing yoga poses. So it could just simply be a breath, a breathing practice, or a hand gesture, or there's a lot of research around mindfulness right now. So mindfulness practice is working. So that's the essence of what LifeForce Yoga is, and it's something that integrates. So anybody could use LifeForce Yoga practices. I love it because I love my yoga practice, and I love incorporating it into my yoga practice, and I just came from teaching a yoga class where we were working with strength and sound for strength and poses for strength and visualizations for strength. And that's beautiful, but, if I'm sitting on an airplane and need that, what do I do? And LifeForce Yoga has given me the tools to sit on an airplane in a public place and connect with what I need.
Yes.
And without having to do a yoga pose.
See, that's the key, I think, and that's interesting to me. And I'm glad that you're saying this about LifeForce. I'm being educated. I didn't know about LifeForce Yoga or what it means. But one of the things that resonates with me, Rose, is that you talk about how, our somatic memory, I talk about in Supreme Love Project how important somatic memory is. If we're not tapping into somatic memory as a part of the infrastructure of our connective tissue to soul, we're not going to be healed. It doesn't matter how much time passes. It doesn't matter how much therapy you do. It doesn't matter how many books you read. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many people you confess your sins to or, talk to on the phone. It could be your best friend who you think knows you so well, and if you talk to her or him long enough and hard enough and cry it out, you'll get it out. No. You could literally spend the rest of your days until you die with the same stories spinning in your soul, the same memories rising up every few weeks, every few years, based on a random number or a set of triggers. It's not until you do your healing at a DNA level, at a somatic level, that you will shift out of those memories, create new stories, new voices, come up higher in your up-leveling, to do clearing work, to do cutting work, that is really rooted in your subterrane. It cannot happen completely and fully at the level of consciousness or at the level of cognitive mind. So thank you for expressing so clearly the way that the body is significant in doing the healing, the deep healing that we need to do to get well.
Yes. And it's, we have a body. We're in a body for a reason. And, we can try and live our lives from the neck up, but, it's going to give us problems eventually. And Bessel van der Kolk, who is working heavily with trauma and developed the Trauma Center in Brookline, Massachusetts, and I may have misremembered the name, but close enough. He mentioned to Amy once, she saw him in a conference, and he said, it's only yoga. And he won't work with people that are not doing yoga. So they've developed trauma-sensitive yoga, and there are a lot of yogas that work with trauma. LifeForce Yoga, we work with trauma. But it's that he has seen with his own psychotherapy practice that people don't get better unless they're doing something like yoga. And it's one of those things that even researchers are like, wait, what is it about yoga? It's kind of hard to, because there's so many different kinds of yoga, and yet there's so many different kinds of yoga seem to be having the similar kinds of impact. And you can't, if you take the postures out of the practice, then it's not yoga. So it's an interesting field to be working in and a field for people to be studying, because there's this part of it. It's like, wait a second, what's happening here? And I believe through my own practice is the what's happening here, the reason the whole practice is a whole piece is because of the reconnection that's happening to wholeness, to the soul, to whatever you want to call it, to Christ consciousness within you. That reconnection is the key of yoga, and that I think it's pretty hard to objectively study that. What is the measure for that reconnection, other than how we feel?
other than how we feel. And I'm so glad you're talking about this, Rose, and I'm glad that you brought up Christ consciousness, because I believe the Supreme Love is essentially Christ consciousness, and the Supreme Love healing methodology goes into the soma, and it applies that balm of Gilead into that lower part through a guided meditation and a series of subsequent methods and practices that you can live out, like you said, on an airplane, doing grocery shopping, picking up your kids from school or whatever, where you can feel in that healing, that Supreme Love healing, and push it forward into an embodiment that sticks, that really, really sticks, so that you can actually transform into the image of Christ, so that you can actually get better and deepen your healing. Now, I've seen on your website, and I think you mentioned just now in this conversation, it may have been in the previous moments that we talked before we started, is that LifeForce Yoga is a mood management practice. So if we're talking about feelings, I'd like for you to talk about that. Can you say more about what that means? LifeForce Yoga is a mood management practice. What does that mean?
For sure. Well, to simplify it, I like to ask people in a room of people, how many of you have experienced a moment of lethargy today? And I know I have. And how many people have experienced a moment of excessive energy or anxiousness today? I know I've experienced that. That's the mood. And we gravitate between these two opposites. And someone with a diagnosis tends to get stuck in one of those opposites of lethargy or anxiety. And they get stuck and they stay there and they spend most of their time there. So when we use yoga to manage it, and particularly when we use LifeForce Yoga, one of the main things we do is meet the mood. So meeting you where you are. So if you are anxious, one of the things that has been said for decades, you're anxious, go to a restorative yoga class. Now, if you've never been to restorative yoga, it is lying down on the ground with lots of props and staying in these supine, like really yummy, juicy poses if you want it. And you might take a nap for 5-10 minutes before the teacher has you move to another pose. They're really lovely classes. But if you're anxious and you go to one of those classes, you'll be crawling out of your skin. As I mentioned in my story, at the end of class, at the end of moving for an hour and 20 minutes, I would lay down and I could not be still because I felt ants were crawling all over me because I had so much anxiety to burn away that it kept me from relaxing. So convention has said, you need to relax. If you're anxious, you need to relax. But you're not going to relax if you're anxious, so we've got to burn that off. So one of the main things that we teach is someone who's anxious needs to burn that energy off. Maybe you're doing sun salutation. Maybe you're doing vigorous pranayama. Maybe it's just bouncing, on a rebounder or bouncing up and down, just releasing that. Maybe it's just shaking the body like a dog, and, blowing the breath out through the lips. And then once that has been met, it's about starting to bring in the practices that we need. So, a relaxing breathing practice, maybe an alternate nostril, or inhaling for a count of 4 and exhaling for a count of 6 is relaxing and soothing to the body. That works better if we've met the mood first. So it's, in essence, it's like the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down. We need to take the medicine, but how do we take it so it works for us? And then with this mood management, we also incorporate techniques, and these techniques have to really be taught because of our go, go, go society and culture. We don't know how to stop, how to pause, and to feel what we are feeling after a practice. So a lot of that is something simple as the language we use is sense the hand, the fingertip, the right hand, the left hand. Maybe there's tingling or warmth or coolness. but we've forgotten how to just pause and feel what the body is feeling, because for many of us, and for those that feel disconnected and those with a history of trauma, it is not safe to be inside our bodies at all. Right? They've been violated, and our bodies often, quote unquote, betray us. And so the mood management practice is that meeting the mood, and then we call it introducing an intervention. So what is it that balances? And then sensing and experiencing what just happened and what the body is feeling. And but we need the practices to come into that feeling the body, because the practices themselves, if you shake your hands, and you can do it as you're listening, just shake them, 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 and then stop shaking them and feel them. They're kind of buzzy, tingly, they might be warm. That's the pause. That's what becomes so important, is the pauses afterwards. But we have to do these practices to get to the pause. And the body, and many people have said similar things, but Amy Weintraub, I've heard her say again and again, the body is always present. The mind is a time traveler. And at the present moment, I'm talking to you in a small room in my home. This present moment is really all that there is. Everything else is either a memory or a worry. This present moment is the only thing that exists. And because we have the capability of creating our present moment, for those of us that feel disconnected or unsafe, we can make the present moment a safe place to be.
Yeah.
And so that's that mood management aspect of it.
Yeah. The ability to be very present and to be conscious and have a system through which we can activate that presence and consciousness. You know what? What I realize is that's one of the reasons I advocate for coaching. It's one of the reasons I designed Supreme Love projects that are free and open and available to the public, because I want to get out this messaging, and I want to drive it home over and over and over again in lots of different ways, that are accessible to lots of different people from all over the world. And it just bears repeating over and over again. This management system that you're talking about, the management practice is a system. It's a system for knowing what to do. It's a whole repertoire of skills and methods that you can draw from to really shore up strength and capacity in your now, in your soul's ability to be here, present, and notice deeply and grow an affinity and an affection and a deep love and respect and attachment to what is present, as opposed to defaulting back to our soul's ability to, as you say, travel throughout time, going way, 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 way back into the past, sometimes back into other people's past, going super, super far into the future and attempting to imagine what we do not control and cannot control. And so it's about having a system to do it, because if we've gotten to this point as women where we have a lot of trauma stored in our bodies and a lot of trauma bonds, we have a lot of terror in our souls, we're going to need a system. We're going to need a practice, and we're going to have to really, really commit, because it's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take some undoing. That's the way I see it. Do you think the same?
Yeah, and the reason that I really gravitated towards LifeForce Yoga, it took me a while to figure out that this is why I gravitated towards it, and then made it my work and my dream, is that the language that we use is empowering language. That Babette Rothschild, who wrote The Body Remembers, the client or me, whoever is on the yoga mat, because that's the method that I work in, is in the driver's seat. So we are driving our own healing, and the people we work with are driving their own healing. It's that I'm there to support, to help hold and to give permission. So much of what we do is empowering language. And, I never tell a client this is a safe space, because that's not for me to determine whether or not somebody else feels safe. Or I never say, oh, this is the perfect practice for you. I might say, I think this might be a really great practice. It's for them to say to me, that was the perfect practice. That's what I've been looking for, because all of our experiences and all of who we are and are made up to be determine how we respond to different things. So what may be the perfect thing for my anxiety might be different for the next person's anxiety or your anxiety. And
right.
So it's, there's this sense of we're working together and co-creating, and not this is the prescription for what you need to do. Because I know I've experienced somebody saying, if you want this to happen, just do this. And then it never happened for me. And then I feel, well, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? Yeah. And then it's like my fault because it didn't work. And we've worked really hard to make it so that it's about dialogue and connecting, and this might work for you, so that people have, there's self-acceptance that gets woven into the practice for people, and they are selecting to accept themselves as they are. And it's a beautiful thing to witness, but, that language piece then becomes real key, and how we do it. And it's subtle, obviously. It's a little harder system to learn language, because, I came from a family that said, you need to, you need to, you need to, you need to. Boy, did that take years to eliminate. Yeah. Well, you need to just do this from my vocabulary. Years. So, and that's not, oh, well, you just need to go to a yoga class. That's so constrictive. But that's how I used to speak 10 years ago, because that's my own language background even. So some of it's subtle, and but the good news is that even if the language is not quite where it could be, or as empowering or as accepting as it could be, the practices still work.
Yeah.
So even if someone's not talking you through the practice, it still works, which is, that's why I like yoga. I can take it home and do it myself, and still have benefits.
Right. Yeah. That's really powerful. I like the way you also talked about the variety in healing. Because we're all unique, we are all distinct. When we find the path that resonates and speaks to us, we can get on it and be clear that it's got far-reaching benefits. I mean, you're talking about, LifeForce Yoga, and there are lots of different types of yoga. People are generally familiar with the idea that physical activity does a great deal of good things for lots and lots of people. So what I'm getting from what you're saying, Rose, is that you go into LifeForce Yoga, you know that it will probably work for you because of the huge body of research and experience about the practice of yoga. And just like the Supreme Love methodology for healing is based on meditative practices that are entrenched in a Christian paradigm, that are guided by the prompting of the Holy Spirit, they have to happen on a quantum level. There's proof that they work for the majority of people. And what I like is that what you're saying is, just like any workout plan, it will manifest and work uniquely for you as a unique and distinct being. And that's a wonderful way to prepare people. It's a wonderful, expansive way to get us all excited about our journey. It's a way of saying there's lots to discover about how your healing is going to work. It's not about a prescriptive thing where I can say this will definitely happen. I can say this will probably happen. This is likely to happen. Now let's see. Let's go for it and really, really see. I like the way you put that. So thank you for that gift.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you were coming to me as a client, now that I know your religious background and how much, that's a part of you, we might end our practice with Amen instead of the sound of Om, because Amen means something to you.
Yes, it does.
And that's the adaptability in LifeForce Yoga, is that, now that I know that means something to you, I'm going to use that when I work with you. Or instead of talking about welcoming the divine, I'm going to use your language. Feel the expansion of Christ in your heart. We have there's a generic language that we have that's hopefully inviting and encompassing to everybody. But when I know somebody's beliefs, it's using those beliefs because it's your practice, not mine, not about me. It's actually about the person doing the practice. And that adaptability is so key because a lot of things aren't adaptable. And it's not okay to adapt those. And some yoga systems are, this is the way it's done, and this is how you do it. In India, this is how you do it. It's kind of that prescriptive culture. And that's one of the adaptations we've made with LifeForce Yoga, is that it's not one way. It's your way.
Wow. So I've got one more question for you, Rose. Okay. And we could talk, I probably could talk to you for the rest of the day. We have to make sure that we get a lot of space in for other people, though. So I'm going to ask you, if you could think about LifeForce Yoga, what is the one practice that you recommend for healing from the inside out that might be taken from LifeForce Yoga?
Well, the one practice that I think has been key in my own healing journey, and it's called Yoga Nidra, which means yogic sleep. Nidra means yoga. Or sleep. And I think the reason it's so accessible is because the way it's practiced is you lie down and you play the track on your phone or your iPad or, whatever you're using. And somebody else leads you through the practice. So it's not, you don't have to worry about, am I doing this right? Because all you're doing is lying there and following with your awareness what's being said on the track. And it's, as a practice, it is recommended as a daily practice of 20, 30 minutes a day, every single day. And I have clients where we've recorded one for them in a session where part of their practice is to put a do not disturb sign on their door, close the door, turn their phone off, and lie down in their office and do a yoga nidra. It can be done sitting in an airplane or in a commuter train or whatever. All you need is a place to be still and relatively undisturbed. Right? So if you're on an airplane, there might be some minor disturbances. And the practice itself goes through sensing the body, and so it's the left hand, the left thumb, index finger. It's just walking through the different body parts, feeling the body parts, and then watching the breath, watching the inhale and the exhale. And then it starts to move into an exploration of the opposites and feeling heaviness and then feeling lightness. And in LifeForce Yoga, we've adapted it so that it's feeling a constriction and feeling a place of freedom. And then, is there emotion woven into that constriction? Is there emotion woven into that openness? And going back and forth between the two. And throughout the practice, we are stepping into these awarenesses where we become aware of the fact that constriction, the feeling of constriction and the feeling of openness exist in the body at the same time. But I'm aware that there's so much more. I am so much more than the changing feelings and the changing mood states in my body. I am so much more. We are all so much more. And Yoga Nidra is such a beautiful practice for achieving that. It's a meditation practice, but it's done lying down. And It's also has been researched. iRest is what was researched and developed by Richard Miller in conjunction with the Department of Defense, and it was studied with active duty soldiers and veterans, and they were delivered a specific protocol which informs the LifeForce Yoga protocol. And the people with active PTSD, these soldiers, were noticing these profound effects of, oh, somebody cut me off in traffic, and instead of, getting really angry and screaming at them, I just was like, hey buddy, I guess you need to get there before I do. And they were noticing these big changes, but the person delivering the protocol was saying, oh, well, whenever we do the opposites, they're all snoring. So it's a way of doing really deep work without deep pain. And so yoga nidra, and not all yoga nidras are like that. There are some what some people might call disturbing yoga nidras. There are some where they're having you visualize a dead body, and you don't do that in LifeForce Yoga. We don't give things to visualize. We give visualize something that represents strength, but we don't plant. See a red rose. See a green leaf. We don't plant that kind of visualization. So not all yoga nidras are created equally, but the LifeForce Yoga, and I recorded one for this conference, a LifeForce Yoga Nidra, but that's the practice because it doesn't. All it needs is you. Just you and a player. You can put it on a CD and listen to it on a CD player if you've still got CD players. And daily. Like right now, we're moving into Yoga Nidra time for me in my day.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, almost Yoga Nidra time to just lie down and check out of the busyness and the to-do list and check into me.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That sounds amazing. That sounds good. That sounds like something we need, Rose. Thank you. So I do not want to end this interview, but I really need to make sure I get one more piece of wisdom from you. I don't want to leave that out. I'm going to ask you to please give us some parting gifts, 3 pieces of wisdom, advice, some prompts, some things to research and look up, key questions to ask ourselves, so that we can have some real great action steps after this conversation and actually hit the ground running and do something now that we've heard from you.
Well, of course. Well, being from the yoga background and LifeForce Yoga, I have 3 simple and easy practices. So the first one is the gift of the present moment, and it's inhale from the soles of the feet up to the crown of your head, and say to yourself in your mind, I am, and exhale to the soles of the feet and say in your mind, here. Inhale to the crown of the head, I am. Exhale to the soles of the feet, here. I'm doing that 2 more times. It's a very simple practice that takes less than 30 seconds. Inhale, I am. Exhale, here. And you can add other affirmations. I like to use that when I'm feeling, I like to add in grounded sometimes. So I'm exhaling to my feet and affirming for myself, I am grounded. As I exhale to my feet, as in I'm here grounded in my body, right in this moment. So that's the first one. And you can do that often, all the time. There are no contraindications for that one at all. No reason not to do that. The second one uses, and this is a practice for self-acceptance that uses touch and sound and a visualization. So we take the right hand to the heart as though we're pledging allegiance. We take the left hand to the right side of the chest and then hook the thumbs together so you have a bird shadow puppet across the chest. And then feeling the hands there. And we like to vibrate the heart with the sound of yum, Y-A-M, and an emphasis on the Y, and you'll feel that. But as the hands are here, you might invite a visualization for self-acceptance or love, something that represents it, or maybe it's just the word or the feeling. And so the sound yum is like so. Inhaling. Yum. So it's vibrating love, compassion, and self-acceptance through the heart and through the heart space.
Yeah.
And with that simple practice, your brain is releasing oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone in the brain that supports resilience. So that in itself, you might need to, if you're in your workspace, you might want to step into a quiet room to do that. Or even better, teach your coworkers and do it together.
Wow.
Don't separate yourself, but teach those around you. Let's do this little practice. Eagle, mudra, or gesture over the heart. Find a visualization for self-acceptance or love, and the sound of yum. And 3 times. And that in itself could begin to change your life. And then the final piece, and I talked about it at length with you, is welcoming the opposites through Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra, I think it's such a key resource. We love, with LifeForce Yoga, we have them available on our website and a CD, and there's one for this program. Richard Miller is nice. Robin Carnes is also another nice resource. Jennifer Reese. Those are some beautiful yoga nidras that are in the vein of self-acceptance, as we've talked about. And then there are many other yoga nidras. You could have so much fun and have hundreds of them on your iPod or on your phone. You can get carried away with yoga nidra, and there are worse things to get carried away with.
Yeah. Tell me about it. I just did that practice with you, and I felt a shift. There's so many traumas in my body that I have dissolved, and so many, as a result, so many trauma bonds in my social circles, in my emotional circles that have dissolved along with my trauma bonds in my body. And that meditation, I just did that yum meditation with the bird over my chest. It gave me a little bit of a new clip that I'm going to explore after this interview. And I thank you for that, because that's the other thing I want to leave our guests with. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I want to leave our guests with this idea and know that this is lifelong work. This commitment to ourselves. We're basically in our bodies. There's an Amazon and an ocean of memories to heal. And the faster, with the greatest level of exuberance and commitment you start this work, the faster and with the greatest level of exuberance and abundance you will find yourself shifting out of the somatic pain that plagues you. And so for me now, I'm at the point where every time I feel a little click, I jump on it. I'm like, oh, that's something new to clear. That's something new to dissolve. That's something new to explore. That's something new to bless. That's something new I can learn about me and that I can graduate. And so thank you for these gifts. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for being an example for others of how that works and the pathway, and for being so vocal about what you do and how you do it, because the more of us speaking about our pathway out of the darkness and into the light, the more people will be able to touch. And it's so important to dissolve the nastiness and the stigma of constrictions, because we all have them.
You're absolutely right.
I thank you for everything that you do, and for your example.
Amen. Well, thank you, sister. So, we are done. This is the conclusion of another Cold Crush interview. It's been a blessing to all of us, everyone who's listening from all over the world. We at last count had 11 different countries represented in the Supreme Love Project. So welcome to everyone from wherever you are tuned in from. Please go over to the Supreme Love Project Closed Facebook group. Knock on the door. You will gain entry. And I will invite Rose and other guests from Hot Help and Cold Crush, the Supreme Love Summit, every Supreme Love Project that we offer to you to come over and answer questions for us after this interview. And remember, take this message to heart, build it into your body, and I will see you on the next episode of A Supreme Love Project. Bye-bye.
Thank you for participating in the Supreme Love Project. We're a division of Literacy for Life, LLC. Please visit thesupremeloveproject.com for more information about our products and services. Visit JanineStaples.com for more information about our beloved founder and president. And remember, take this message to heart and build it into your body. We'll see you next time, right here. The place to make love, not war, every day of your life.